Hey everyone! Today, we'll be talking about how you can stop dying to the enemy jungler's first gank. The immense value of this is self-explanatory, so let's just jump into it. So the most basic thing that you can do at the start of the game to avoid an early death is to watch for the leash. And many of you likely know what I mean by this, but bear with us as we explain it to ensure everyone is on the same page. So just as a very quick example of what we mean by a leash, let's watch the very start of this game from Ahri's perspective. So we can see her coming into lane, and this is around 130 as this camp spawns over here. But then we can see that her bot lane, of course, is here leashing this for Zac. But she doesn't yet know where the enemy jungler has started because no one else has shown up yet. But around 150 to 155 is when people usually start showing up after a leash. So we see Kai'Sa coming in here, and not only do we see her, but it's very important that Ahri actually pan down to look at these champions rather than just using the minimap to see, oh, they're missing mana, they actually probably really did leash, or they're missing health. It's very important to check that so you're less likely to get faked out, because sometimes people will come into lane late just faking that they leash to try to trick you. So now Ahri knows almost for certain that Skarner did indeed start on this bottom side and will likely be pathing up to the top, but we'll talk about that more in a second here. So watching for the leash is how we can get a really good idea of where the enemy jungler might have started. But how do we then utilize that information? Well, the way you utilize the information is going to depend on which jungler you're facing. And there are three main jungle archetypes to worry about at this point. And before we dive too deeply into those archetypes, I just want to say that there's a bit of variance within these sections, and that nothing in League is quite so defined as this. For example, while Elise and Skarner are both in the level 3 to 4 ganker section, Elise will almost always gank very early, while Skarner can gank but can also power farm. And champions in the power farmers section can also certainly gank, they're just not as likely to, or their ganks don't need to be as respected. Anyway, let's talk about how these champions affect your play post-leash. So starting out with the champions who can potentially gank at level 2, let's talk about how to play around this from the top lane. So honestly, level 2 ganks in the top lane are incredibly rare, as the jungler, by showing top, leaves their bot side completely up for grabs. This is why level 2 ganks are much more common mid lane. It allows the jungler to gank and continue his route down to protect his jungle. So I honestly wouldn't worry about this too much from topside. If you have a strong feeling it might happen, definitely just drop a ward and play back and away from where the jungler will come to give yourself more time to react and escape. Okay, now that we've talked about how to handle a potential level 2 gank by warding and playing away from the threat if need be, let's now move on to how to handle a jungler who won't gank at level 2, but may very likely gank at levels 3 or 4, which is much more common and relevant to top lane. So the primary assumption that we'll be operating under throughout this section is that a jungler's first level 3 or 4 gank before basing will be on the opposite side of the map from which they start, aka where you saw the leash. This certainly will not be the case 100% of the time, but especially at lower elos, this will happen the vast majority of the time. Within this assumption, there are two main scenarios that the leash will present you with: the jungler pathing toward you, or the jungler pathing away from you. Let's first tackle what to do when the jungler is pathing toward you. Now, naturally, this scenario means that you will need to be highly aware of the threat of a potential gank headed your way. But before we fully dive into how to play around this potential gank, I want to mention that we're going to be playing as safely as possible and assuming very little of your teammates. For example, let's say you're playing Ornn here and you have a Nidalee up against this Sejuani. Now, the Sejuani you see get the leash down here, and that implies she's going to be coming this way. Now, however, with this Nidalee at a super high level of play, This Nidalee is going to get up to this top side faster, and then immediately start trying to mess with this Sejuani, get eyes on her, interrupt her ability to gank, etc. And that's going to allow this Ornn to play very differently. He can play more aggressively, he doesn't need to be as scared, he doesn't need to ward as proactively. However, this is not something that you can rely on in whatever elo you're at, almost certainly. Maybe you're challenger, fine. But if you're not, you can't rely on this Nidalee playing perfectly and giving you the protection you need. So you'll always want to play safely, take the correct steps to ensure that you don't die to this gank, and just be ready. Anyway, moving on, how do you deal with this potential threat of the Sejuani coming up to the top lane and trying to gank you? Well, the thing that really complicates it a little bit is that you're not sure what level or time the Sejuani will gank at. You know, it's possible that she goes for a very slow route, kind of meanders her way up at level 4, right? It's also possible that she does a very quick 3 camp and then instantly arrives in the top lane, ganking you very, very early. So you need to be prepared for both and know how to deal with either scenario. So let's check out some in-game examples that will show us how to do just that. So let's look at this example from Jax's perspective here. So he starts out, Aurelia shows up right away, which immediately indicates that obviously she's not leashing here. Now it is possible that the enemy jungler Kindred could be starting without a leash, but just not super likely, right? So we are going to see that they arrive late, both missing mana, and so Jax now knows that there was a leash here almost for certain and that Kindred started here, and will likely be routing up toward him. So what's he going to do with this information? Well, if we speed this up, we're going to see that he actually plays very, very aggressively without much concern for Kindred. Now, right around 220, 225 is when you do want to drop that first ward, and we see Jax just not doing that at all. And shortly after, Kindred comes up and is able to land a pretty nice gank, all things considered. So even though Jax is able to trade 1 for 1, he still gave over a mark to the snowballing Kindred, so it's not great. And as we can see, Kindred did do that very quick 3 camp rush up, taking red, blue, Gromp before running top. And had he just warded against this, he could have very easily backed out and not died, or at that point made the call to go in if he wanted to. In this example, we're actually going to be looking at both of these top laners' perspectives. So right away we can say that they both see leashes coming out, indicating that both junglers have started on the bottom side, which is accurate. So moving forward, let's see how these players move around and play around this knowledge. So right away we can see that Fiora is beginning to push this lane a bit, and that's definitely going to influence how both of these players have to ward around the potential ganks coming their way. So as she continues to push, we're now getting to that time where you want to drop that first ward, right? And against a faster clearing jungler than Jax, she might have wanted to already drop this ward, but Jax isn't a terribly fast clearer, so what she wants to do is actually finish pushing this out to make sure that she doesn't miss any CS, because she knows that she has time. So we're going to see her do that, and then come down and drop this ward. Now on the blue side, you can almost always get away with just dropping this ward. It's much easier to ward from the blue side in the top lane, so that's what she goes ahead and does. And we can see that Ryze isn't doing anything, right? He's pushed back far enough that he doesn't really need to, but notice his position. He's up away from where he would potentially be getting ganked, and kind of back there. He's not standing down here where he could get jumped on by Zac from here. He's positioning correctly even though he's not warding. And very shortly we'll see the same thing out of Fiora. You know, right now she kind of has to be standing in this wave as a melee champion with CS coming up, but right after she finishes this, notice her positioning. Instantly runs back and up away from where a potential gank could be coming. There's no CS, there's nothing for her to be doing here, she can't trade onto Ryze in tower range, so she's just back and away. Even though she's warded, she's still respecting the possibility of a Jax gank. So this is really nice play from both of these players to play around the possible gank that was headed their way when they saw that leash. Now at this point they do see both of their junglers fighting, so you don't really need to worry about the unseen level 4 gank anymore. So this is kind of moot from this point on in terms of warding against that unpredictable level 4. For this example, let's check out Gnar's perspective as this game starts. So right away, once again, we're watching for a Leash. Swain showing up early is a good sign that it's likely going to be bottom, but we do want to check just to be sure because why not? So they both come in, Xayah's missing some mana, indicates that there was very likely a start at this red. So that's the assumption we're going to be going under, that he started here and will be pathing up toward the top side. So let's see what happens. Now Gnar instantly starts pushing the wave, as he tends to do, especially versus melee champions, but in this case as well. And we can see that as he's approaching this 230 mark, he's going to once again kind of finish off this wave and then go for a slow ward, just like in the last clip. Now the reason that he's doing this is because the enemy jungler is a Trundle, who not only clears at not a great pace, but is also not a very terrifying jungler, so he doesn't feel super under threat. Now what's unique about this game is that he doesn't see Trundle really at all. He still hasn't seen Trundle and won't for some time. And this is kind of that situation that we were talking about, you know, is Trundle going for a level 4, a more full clear, and then pathing up? Or is he just going back to base and then heading back bottom? You know, we don't know. We don't have any vision on him. Xin Zhao hasn't gotten us anything just yet, but once again, we don't really want to rely on that in lower elos anyway. So what we're going to see happen is actually just Gnar getting pushed back in. Now, whether this was a conscious decision from Gnar to let himself be pushed back in or not, it does make it so that he doesn't really have to re-ward once this ward falls. And normally what we would do if this ward falls and we still haven't seen the enemy jungler is just immediately place another. If you place your ward at 230 or closely, by the time this drops, your next trinket ward will be up, so that's how you want to protect against that level 4 gank. But in this situation, as a ranged champion with mobility against a weak jungler, he doesn't feel the need to ward at all, so he's just going to play back, knowing he's safe, and save his ward for if he needs it later. Great, now that we've seen a bunch of examples of how to play when you see a Leash on the opposite side of the map, let's now quickly cover what to do when the Leash is on your side. So let's say that you're playing Ornn here and you see Singed come in late, missing mana, indicating that a Leash occurred on this top side. Now once again, the assumption there that we're operating under is that this Leash up on the top side means that the jungler will be pathing toward the bottom side, right? So then there's really no need to ward, right? Well, yes and no. So since you might not very well get ganked, then there's nothing you really need your ward for, right? So you might as well ward. So even if the assumption is that you're not going to get ganked, there's really no other thing to spend your ward on that's better, unless you're in some weird matchup where brush control is really important. And the reason this is important is that, yeah, let's say Sejuani probably isn't going to come in level 2 gank you, or do any crazy invades, but someone like Kindred might, who's still in that level 3 to 4 gank window group. She very well might start out at her red and then run over here, maybe take Gromp as well, depending on the jungler that you have, and then could very easily come up and land a gank on you. So at that point you really do want to ward against the level 3 gank, because by the time they would be level 4, your jungler will have likely pathed up here and given you some vision or idea where they are. So we recommend dropping ward around 220, even if you think they're heading toward that bot side. That being said, let's say it is someone like that Sejuani, right, who you're very confident will be heading toward that bottom side. Just be aware that that does allow you to play more aggressively in lane. You can play farther up, you can play more risky, because you're almost 100% positive that they are still going to be down there. Now you're still going to ward, you're not going to pretend that it's 100% certain that they're down there unless you actually have vision, but you can make that assumption, and don't miss out on that opportunity off of the 1% chance that they are coming up here. Awesome! Now that we've covered how to play against a champion who might gank at level 3 or 4, whether they're pathing toward you or away from you, let's move on to the power farming category. So power farmers are exactly what they sound like. Champions more likely to spend time farming than ganking, especially in the early game, which allows you to play in a certain way. So in a situation like this one where you're now up against a power farmer like Master Yi or Shyvana, it just allows you to play a certain way. It allows you to play very aggressively. You don't have to respect ganks as much, but we are still going to suggest early wards just because why not, as we discussed earlier. You know, they still could go for that invade, and then if you're playing like crazy, they might just come up for a quick kill. So you do still want to ward for that level 3 just in case, and because there's no reason not to. Now, the same applies if they're pathing up toward you. It doesn't really matter in this scenario because you're not planning on getting ganked either way. It's just a safety net. So that's how we recommend playing against all 3 types of junglers. However, real quick before we end this video, let's discuss a little more what we mean by warding and some of the options that you have. So one thing that you'll obviously have to consider when you place a ward in this area is where exactly to place it. You know, do you place it right here? Do you place it right there? Do you go a bit farther down and place it there? Or really defensively right there? And a lot of this really depends on how much pressure you're under from the enemy jungler. So against someone like a Master Yi who has very slow ganks, has to just walk up slowly, can't really do anything else, you can get away with a very greedy close ward. And that'll allow you to miss some less XP, spend more time harassing your opponent in lane, etc. because you're not walking down as far to place that ward. Now, if you're against someone who's a bit more threatening, you know, maybe she has Moby boots and she's just going all over the place, and if you don't see her early, you're very likely going to die. Another good example is Rammus, right, where you have to see him coming ahead of time. Against someone like that, you really do want to consider those deeper wards. Getting that vision ahead of time so you have plenty of time to react and run away before they ever get to you. So keep that in mind however you're warding in any situation in lane phase. You want to think about where you're warding based off of the amount of threat that you're under. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, everyone.